Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsport sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to episode 68 of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. I hope you're pumped to be here. I know I'm excited to have you. My name is Josh Weesey. I'm here to help guide you through the crazy world of motorsports sponsorship. And I have a vision. Regardless of if you are a motocross racer, a UTV racer, backcountry snowmobiler, drag racer, whatever it may be, my vision is that you can learn how to better market yourself and drive more value for your sponsors. That's what this show is all about. To help me with that vision, I have an awesome guest on today, and that is X Games snowbike star Robert Haslam. Now, before we get into the structure and also the interview with Robert, I have a few things I want to cover with you. So first off, I would be very, very grateful if you would head over to iTunes and left a rating and review. I've been reading the ratings and reviews of the show on the show, and this one came from Jim Riley, who was a past guest. And he basically just made a short and sweet one. I enjoyed all of his shows so far, and he was also preparing to be a guest, so he did some research. But either way, he's just saying great job, so I really appreciate his support. And if you haven't already heard his episode, it was phenomenal, so check it out. Also, whatever podcast player you use, go ahead and subscribe to the show. That way you don't miss the guests that we have upcoming. Next, we have snowcross racer for Team LaValle, and that is Kyle Pauline. After that, we have the host of Driven, Scott Sparrow, coming on. And if you happen to have missed our last episode, we had Jared Heshka of MBRP and Tiffany Stone. We all together tackled some viewer-submitted questions. So pretty cool episode, a lot different from what we've done in the past. So go ahead and check that one out. That was episode 67. Now, if you want to get access to upcoming guests, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. And that is also a forum where you can ask questions around sponsorship. One thing cool that we've started doing on the show, and that's specifically on the Facebook page, is live videos. And most recently we had Brock Hoyer on, another X Games star, and he shared with us his thoughts and dedication. So that's released on the podcast as well. So if you're already a subscriber, you would be getting the audio versions of those live videos. But if not, head over to Facebook, give our page a follow, and you will see upcoming guests there. Pretty excited. We got Sarah Price in the near future, and also George Hamill. So Sarah was on episode 12. George Hamill's on 23. Excited to have both those come back on the live show. Now, this episode is brought to you by 5 awesome companies. Weld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsport sponsorship. Bold Racing and Suspension, their family race team and custom suspension experts. Armor Coat, they produce products that make your cleanup easier. And then Crash Addict Industries, they produce extreme metal fab and safety products. And I also want to give a quick shout out to some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK, Studboy Traction, and One Stop Performance. Now, this show is structured like a race. We'll begin with the qualifier, which is a basic intro. In Heat 1, we'll dive into Robert's background. In Heat 2, we'll discuss sponsorship tactics and strategies. In the main event, we'll discuss mindset, and then we'll end at the finish line. And that's where we get closing comments, and you find out how to get a hold of Robert. Without further ado, let's make it happen. So, Robert, why don't you go ahead and fill in the gaps from that intro and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so freestyle motocross athlete by trade. Been doing that about, I don't know, I'd say just about a decade now. 30 years old. 30 this year has treated me well. I've transitioned into riding snow bikes on a whim with it being introduced into Winter X Games this year, and did pretty well for myself there. So, yeah, going to kind of just stick with the freestyle motocross for the spring season, and then keep doing the snow bike stuff and see where that goes for me.
I'm excited to see where the whole snow bike thing goes. I was very fortunate to, early on in this podcast, to interview Brock Hoyer. He was on episode 10, and that was when I think it might have been the first time the snow bikes were raced in X Games. And he killed it in that race. So I interviewed him it was like a week afterwards, so he was still pumped from it. And then he's actually coming back on the show for a live version. Actually, depending on probably the day I release this, it's already out because he's going to be. It's 3/19 is when we're actually going to be recording the live version. So that's pretty cool. Him and I talked a little bit about the snow bike world kind of blowing up, and it just seems like it keeps getting better and better. You're another example of that, just expanding into that world and doing some pretty cool stuff with it, man.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the snow bike thing's just been blowing up, and it's funny because I actually had never even been on a snow bike out in the backcountry or anything prior to X Games. So first time I ever actually got on one was one of these chopped up custom one-off builds for X Games, and then just started trying to do what I do on a normal dirt bike on it. So I think it's definitely got a lot of room to grow, just like the snow bike racing did. And like you said, I'm excited to see where it goes from here too.
Definitely. So I always get curious about this when I hear people switching to different disciplines. I mean, although you've been riding dirt bikes and stuff like that, but switching to something with a big old track on the back like that. How much time did you actually have to prepare and practice for that X Games run?
In the scheme of things, I didn't have a whole lot of time. I think total I had maybe 2.5 months of actual seat time on
wow.
the thing.
Yeah.
But you factor that into the actual event, and most of the guys that were there I was competing against, I think only had maybe a week or two tops on the thing trying to jump it. So I was definitely ahead of the game there on that one. I still think, had we had it even just another couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, we could have worked out a lot more of the bugs, just because, just trying to make one of those kits like that short and to work, let alone, be able to hit a ramp and do tricks and flip and everything else, was just such an undertaking. It was like reinventing the wheel. So it was crazy. It was cool that it actually worked. We had a ton of hiccups leading, literally up to the day of the event, that were just trying to keep us from doing what we wanted to do. So I'm pumped that we were there, pumped that we got to do what we had to do, and then walked away with the medal on top of it. So
yeah.
We'll see for next year what happens, and we got some more time, and hopefully we can go for the gold.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It blows my mind to think of the talent that goes into that, because I've been riding stuff my whole life, and I can't even hit a jump without crashing. So and I'm talking I should say a bump. Let's call it a bump, not a jump. So it's incredible to see people like yourself, killing it like that. Especially, 2 months is nothing, right? And even, we're saying for some of those people 2 weeks, that's absolutely zero time in the grand scheme of things. So I'm impressed. So at least I know there's probably a lot of other people that are impressed too. But plus, you took home silver this year?
I ended up with a bronze. I had some higher hopes for myself going into there. I had at least a handful of the tricks that I intended to throw into the mix, just kind of start things off and see where they placed. But like I said, there wasn't really the time to get everything ironed out for that event, whether it was before or actually at X Games. So, to try and get ramps where they should have been, were supposed to be, kits to work where they were supposed to be. And then, of course, obviously we're at elevation up there too, which was a lot different than everybody was used to.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were just so many factors that played into it that, like I said, I think for next year we'll be able to be a lot more prepared and play around a little bit more and, charging a lot harder and throw down some bigger, wickeder tricks.
That's awesome. Well, what I want to do next is dive into Heat 1, where we really talk a lot more about your background. I want to hear the story. I want to hear, how'd you get to where you're at? How'd you get started in motorsports? So kind of walk us through that journey next.
Yeah, sure. I probably like a lot of guys out there, whether it's dirt bikes or, just playing out in the desert or anything in general. It started as a kid, got my first dirt bike as a kid, and, it was a weekend thing with the folks and friends and everything else. And, eventually somehow it just kind of evolved into going further and further with it, not really sure where it was going to take me. Obviously, as a kid, you always have crazy, audacious dreams, and, a lot of people at some point just dismiss those and kind of go into the real world and do the 9-to-5 thing. And then there's a select few of us that just keep pushing harder and harder. And And, that's kind of what my life story's been. I mean, I've literally kind of came from the bottom, never really having any handouts or anything like that. Just a normal kid with, I guess the world at his fingertips, but, had to earn every little last bit of it. And, literally every year it's just kind of been that same thing. I mean, even going to X Games, I mean, it was just another hurdle to get to that next plateau. So, just rode dirt bikes as a kid and somehow got into freestyle, met some people, started doing some shows here and there. And then, to now I have a business I've built up here in the Seattle area where I'm from, doing demos in the spring and summer. I've got my own ramps that, we try and maintain a decent little schedule here, and it keeps growing every year, which has been awesome. And then a couple years ago, I got put in touch with the Nitro Circus crew and kind of became a fill-in for a few stops here or there each year that they needed me for. So I did that, and then, and then that, like I said, X Games came about too. So now I've got that to add to the resume, and we're just kind of going forward from there.
That's awesome, man. I think it's a cool story, and I want to dig in on a couple things. Do you remember what age you started riding?
Ooh, I think I got my first dirt bike at like 4. So, okay. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't shortly after that, 4 or 5 years old. And then, it's just been kind of this just ever-evolving thing since then.
Yeah. What about the Nitro Circus thing? I mean, how did you, I don't know, maybe walk us through how you actually got connected with those folks?
It's actually a really interesting story. I mean, I could probably go massively into detail on it and be here for the whole hour, but long story short, the last, I don't know, I guess literally up until the last year or so, I've kind of balanced the day job and then also done moto on the side, just because moto hasn't really been profitable enough, despite what a lot of people out there think. I mean, they think, you ride motorcycles and you're out here in the public eye, so you must make millions upon millions of dollars, which couldn't be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. So I've had to make ends meet, and so I was working a day job at the time and, doing okay for myself and still being able to do my passions and everything else. And then Nitro Circus ended up, I got a phone call from one of my buddies on the tour out of Oregon, and they had a show in Alaska, and this was, I think, a Friday afternoon, and the show was the next day, so Saturday in the evening up in Alaska. And like I said earlier, I'm from Seattle, so I mean, that's a good little hike, whether you hop on a flight or whatnot. Right. And so they had someone slated to ride, and that person ended up getting hurt, so they were trying to find a guy last minute. And, with freestyle or motorcycles in general, it's not like skateboard or BMX where you can just take apart your bike or throw your skateboard in a backpack, hop on a plane, and you're there. I mean, you can't really do that with a dirt bike. So they were kind of at the mercy of trying to find someone that rode literally the exact same model year dirt bike that they had on tour to fill that last spot. And they made a few phone calls, but apparently it wasn't working out. And then I just happened to be on the chopping block and got the phone call and, was able to kind of put the 2 and 2 together and make it work. So I literally ran home from my day job and ripped my dirt bike apart at home to take every piece that I needed that, was custom to me. So suspension bars, all that good stuff, threw it in a bag. And, literally from the time I got the phone call to the time got to the airport was probably 4, maybe 4.5 hours. And, in that time frame, had to bomb home from work, pack a bag of clothes, rip apart a dirt bike, pack that, and then get an hour away to the airport to get on a flight to fly to Alaska that night for Nitro Circus. And then it just kind of trickled from there. They were stoked on everything I did, good attitude, solid rider. And then I think I got a couple other shows for them shortly thereafter that year. And then last year I got 2 or 3 other shows as well for them. So just kind of right place, right time. And then, just being a solid guy on and off the bike too.
Well, that's incredible. It is an interesting story. I mean, I couldn't imagine someone calling me, today or something. Hey, I need you here tomorrow to do this crazy event and go now. That's pretty impressive. I'm always curious too when people tell me about stories like this where they had a friend in the industry and that friend somehow decided to call them at that point. So, I want to try to dig into that to see, how did you get on that list? I mean, maybe how'd you connect with this friend? How did it ever come about that because you did something to position yourself to get that phone call. So do you know what that is?
Yeah, so Buddy he's been in freestyle motocross forever. He's kind of one of the OGs, so to speak, of the sport. Bo Bamberg, and I met him years ago. We're both Northwest guys for one, so we met that to relate to. But I met him years ago at another event. I can't recall exactly when or where. And then we've always kind of kept in touch here or there since then. And he's a regular on the North America tour for Nitro and has been for quite some time. So I'm sure it was one of those scenarios where I think they had a show like either the day before or a couple days before in another town, as Nitro does. So they're bouncing around all the time, and all those guys are usually together. And I think, it was probably one of those things, from what I gathered, where they're kind of sitting around and then they realized they were in a pinch. And then, based on the bike they had available, he knew, because he keeps in touch with me, somewhat, and knew that I happened to ride that bike, and just happened to think, hey, he's a solid stand-up dude. He's a good rider. He's got a good bag of tricks that's different from other guys. And, gave me a call. And even when he gave me a call, it wasn't set in stone. It was, hey, there's this opportunity for you to potentially come up here and ride the show with us. It still has to go through the higher ups and the athlete manager and make sure that they're cool with it and whatnot. But, if you're up for it, let me know, and I'll throw your name in the pool. And, then from there, it just kind of became the trickle down thing. And, they ended up being so pinched for time that they didn't have time to go to the big wigs at Nitro at the headquarters and get the approval. And the athlete manager travels with all these guys, and he just, he figured, usually this show is a 10 rider deal for the moto guys. He's like, I got 9 right now. And he's like, honestly, I'm just going to make an executive call and say that we're going to get you up here, because I'd rather have a full roster of 10 than none and be waiting for a call that's probably never going to come. So, it was Bo believing in me, and then also the athlete manager putting his trust in Bo that, I was a good dude. And we just kind of hit it off from there. So, like I said, right place, right time, but then also just, making solid connections along the line in the sport and not burning any bridges.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how important that is, because there's these little things that you don't know is happening. You're making a connection with somebody, and it could be years ahead of when it actually makes an impact. But you met this person because you put yourself out there. You went to an event, you connected with them, you stayed connected with them, and then you basically put yourself in the top of his short list of people to call if he needs something. And so you were there, which I think is awesome. We talk a lot about this type of activity on the show, but we talk about it in the sense of what people do to make connections with sponsors. But I think this is another important way to remember that this type of networking also gets you connections to new opportunities that maybe they don't lead to sponsorship right away, but that's a huge opportunity to be able to be linked up with the Nitro Circus crew. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. It's not something that everybody can, add to their resume and say that they've actually ridden for those guys. I have plenty of friends that I'm super close to that either are, freestyle athletes or just friends I went to high school with that they still, they're just still taken back by that. And, and I'm such a humble guy as it is that I get it, and I'm totally, appreciative and stoked on it. But at the same time, for me, I don't know, I'm kind of almost humble to a fault about it. But yeah, it is a big deal, and it's super cool. And like you said, you keep those avenues open and maintain those relationships, and you never know. It might pay off now, it might pay off later, it might never pay off, but
yep.
At least you have an opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it's good. I think it paid off for you, and it's weird too, because that connection there is probably ultimately how, or connections like that is probably ultimately how you ended up on the show, because I think one of your big fans is Lauren from SSV Works. He had sent me a recommendation to say, you got to get this guy on the show. So do you know how you originally got connected with him, or why he would have raised your name up?
Yeah. So Lauren, that's a lot of the stories I have are just kind of these like funny little stories that people like to tell. But it kind of goes back to how I said earlier that the last handful of years I've been working kind of oddball jobs here and there, or constantly having a day job and trying to balance that with my motocross career. And so I used to live in Central Oregon for 2 or 3 years, and this has been a handful of years now. But when I moved to Central Oregon, and it's funny because I'm injured at the moment, but I, at the same time, had just gotten an injury and was out of work for the riding, couldn't make any money, so I had to go find a job shortly after I moved there. And the job I found was working for Muzzy's Performance when they were still around. And so I started working at Muzzy's, just kind of doing oddball things and worked my way up into the office, doing parts management and things along those lines. And Lauren ended up coming along and becoming their marketing guy, and dealing with their social media. And so we kind of started hitting it off, and he almost kind of became like kind of the dad role for me. I mean, he's quite a bit older than I am, but just full of wisdom, just an overall good guy. And he's just always kind of had my back in that way. So like I've ridden some events in the past, and Lauren's been kind of the backbone behind that, and talking to these promoters and stuff that he's done boosts for Muzzies with, and put my name out there. So he's helped me in that regard, but then also with this show too. And we've always just kept in contact. We talk regularly, and it's hard to meet people like that these days that legitimately have a good outlook on life, love what they do, but then also can have your back when you need it. And so that's pretty much that. And like, I can't say enough good things about Lauren. He's awesome. I appreciate everything he's done for me. And I know that he's just one of those guys that if I needed him, he'd drop everything and help me with whatever I needed.
Yeah. I think it's phenomenal. It's just interesting how these things happen. And I'm always excited when I meet somebody new. I'm always excited to think of what could this actually turn into in the future, not knowing at the time. Like you said, it could be something, it could pay off, it could not pay off. But either way, it's still, I think the potential is exciting.
Absolutely. I think that's, I think in life, really anything in life, I think that's why we keep pushing forward. It's just the potential to grow and do things and see what happens. I mean, you never know unless you try. And there's no point in being stale and mundane in life and just going with the flow of things. I mean, you got to put yourself out there and allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Definitely. Well, you've already shared with us some pretty big resume builders, Nitro Circus and the bronze medal recently. I mean, is there anything else that kind of stands out, things that you'd want to kind of share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I got my own program up here too, Jet City FMX, that just keeps growing. That, it kind of started as like just on a whim. I mean, I had an opportunity to buy a set of ramps to do my own shows, and didn't really ever have any desire to really go out and do that stuff on my own, just because it is a lot more work than just going and doing Nitro or riding for other promoters. But, it's kind of become a family venture where I got the wife and the kids. And last year I started incorporating my daughter on her little TTR 50 into the shows, and we do like a dad-daughter segment. And, I don't know, it's just become like this spring-summer thing that we do as a family. And, we're fortunate enough to where we get to travel around and go hit different cities and locales and do events. And it's kind of like a little vacation getaway for us. And, we're able to make a living doing it too. So it's been awesome. So that just, everything kind of ties in, and it became more of a lifestyle with moto for us than just a career or a job, something that we get to do that most people wish they could do.
Oh, it sounds awesome. Sounds great. Well, the next thing I want to do is dive into Heat 2 and talk about sponsorship tactics and strategies. But right before that, I want to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out crashaddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors. And on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and that also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. Have you ever been out on the trail or at the track or in the middle of the desert and something breaks? Well, of course you have. We've all been there. But a lot of people at that point, they reach into their trusty toolbox for the duct tape or the zip ties or wrenches to fix their machine. However, there's a feeling that you get when you realize you need more than just duct tape to fix that rock chip in your radiator. That's a horrible, horrible feeling to have. And that's why I'm going to tell you next about Solder Weld's metal bonding products, specifically alloy sol. So this product gives you a longer term fix than JB Weld, which is just going to get you back to the trailer or back to the pits. With basically the assistance of MAP gas or propane torch, you can quickly and easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum. And better yet, alloy soil flux is the only flux in industry that cleans and decontaminates the dirty and greasy surface for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part. The alloy sol rods are actually capable of a 30,000 PSI fix, and they're stronger than even the parent metal, and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. So don't let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down in the trail. Bring along some alloy sol aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from Solder Weld. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about bold racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important if you're ready for that next level of performance to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. I don't know about you, but I absolutely can't stand cleaning the mud, filth, grime, goo, garbage off my machines after I go for a ride. It's just frustrating. It takes a lot of time. That's why I'm going to talk to you about Armor Coat next. Armor Coat is designed to help prevent mud, clay, ice, and other grime from sticking to your machine. It makes the cleanup quick and easy. It makes the machine actually look fantastic, and beyond that, it smells phenomenal. I don't know how to describe it, like bubble gum or something like that. It smells great. If you want to know more about Armor Coat, visit armorcoatproducts.com, and you will see their entire product line, all the offerings. Armor Coat is also working on some new stuff. They're soon going to release a solution made for coating the helmet and visor, and also one for wheels to help prevent mud buildup for high temp areas. So make your move now. Go to armorcoatproducts.com. Make a decision that's going to allow you to shorten the amount of time that you spend cleaning so that you can increase the amount of time that you spend riding and racing. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here to discuss sponsorship tactics and strategies. Heat 2, let's make it happen. So first thing that I like to ask in this section, Robert, is around the type of the sponsors or partners that you have right now. So can you kind of go through the people that you're partnered with?
Yeah, definitely. I would say probably like the biggest sponsor for me at the moment that I have is Hum Kombucha, and they kind of fit what we're all about, like myself, but then also like the family aspect of what we got going there. Just a good, wholesome brand that comes out of Central Oregon, and they're kind of in the beverage industry too, like Monster and all the other guys. But they're kind of the healthy alternative. It just has a lot of good morals and good values and everything. So I'm stoked on that. I'm stoked to grow with them. And then I got Fly Racing. They've been awesome. Octane Addictions has been another person that they help me out with graphics, but then they're also a promoter as well. So I do events for him throughout the year, and that's just become a friendship, as well as a sponsorship. So that's been pretty cool. I've got RMR Suspension. They did some wicked work for me for X Games. Elevation Performance, same thing. Wicked products for the snow bike, but then also they just did so much for us on the snow bike build for X Games. I got Duval Racing, a local company out here that's moto based, but they're about 20 minutes from my house right now, and just a bunch of stand-up guys. So a lot of the sponsors I do have is just companies that they're either local or companies that I've always looked up to since I first started riding dirt bikes, and now I'm fortunate enough to represent them doing what I do. And I think that's important in the sponsor game, is to have companies that are willing to stand behind you, but then also companies that you're willing to stand behind wholeheartedly and embrace their products.
I think that's great. The note you said there, companies I always looked up to. I think that's important. If you're, as a sponsored rider, part of your responsibility is to help sell products or build brands. And if you don't believe in that brand, it's tough to be able to sell it. So I think that's an important aspect. Some people have talked on the show, like, how do you say no to a sponsor? If you don't really think that their product is what you like or their brand is what you like. And it's something that you have to think about. Are you really going to be effective at promoting their product, or even yourself, if you don't believe in the product or their mission or anything like that? So I think that's an important note. Going back to the your first sponsor, I missed the name, and I wanted to kind of dig into that. What was the name of that sponsor? The drink company?
Yeah, so it's Hum Kombucha, and Hum is Humm. And basically, the way that I tell people what it is, because most people you've never even heard of kombucha or what exactly it is, or that they even exist. And I guess in the best way to describe it is, kombucha is basically like a tea drink that tastes good, but then also makes you feel good. And when I say that, I mean, it's basically like a fermented tea, but the fermentation is so little that there's not really any alcohol in it. So anybody can drink it, kids, adults, the elderly, anything like that. But being that it's fermented, it has a lot of probiotics in it. And then it's also, because of the fermentation process, packed full of tons of B vitamins for energy. So, I mean, you could kind of look at it in the sense of being like a healthy energy alternative, but it also supports your body and kind of helps give you long-sustaining energy that kind of, I don't know, just kind of supplements your diet in a way too.
Oh, that's cool. While you were talking, I looked them up real quick. Sure enough, you're on there getting your medal as a repost that they put up on one of the pictures. But it looks like a pretty cool brand. I'm like I said, I've never heard of it before either, but yeah, it looks pretty interesting. So that's what I want to dig into more, because brands like that, they're like, we're used to seeing a Monster, we're used to seeing Red Bull in in the motorsports world, but someone like this, how did you ever get connected with this type of sponsor?
Yeah, so it's interesting because they, up until me coming into the picture, they've never really experienced anything like this with the media channels and just the industry in general. So that's where I think it is kind of cool having them on board, because not only am I growing and learning as I go as an athlete, but they're also growing with me in this sponsorship. So a lot of things are kind of left open-ended with them, to where we're just kind of going with the flow, seeing what happens. And so far, not only I, but they all have been pretty stoked on everything. So it's cool. But my wife actually works part-time at a tap room for craft beer, and they have some alternatives for, DDs and everything else that go in there. Yeah. So she at one point had contacted them, trying to get them on tap as an alternative to beer that's on tap. And I don't think it ever really went anywhere, but she ended up having a contact and made first contact there. And I've reached out and tried to talk to the energy drink companies, and they're so massive. And at that point, I hadn't really had any, I hadn't really done Nitro Circus yet. I didn't have X Games in my name. So as far as they were concerned, I was just kind of a nobody that lived up in the Northwest and rode dirt bikes. And, they didn't really see much of the marketing tool. So I didn't really get much for callbacks. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and reach out to them. So I reached out, and it was this bounce around effect, trying to figure out who to talk to. And a lot of that was just because they didn't even really know how to approach it.
Right.
Like I said earlier, they've never been in the industry. They don't know. So they were interested. They just didn't really know what direction to go with it. And I think I talked to them for a couple months off and on, and we just kind of formulated like a handshake agreement for the first year of, let's just do some product, and we'll do some media with you and everything else, and kind of watch it grow and see where it takes us all. And that was actually last year. And so coming into 2018, X Games hadn't even become a reality or anything yet. So I had Nitro Circus to kind of throw at them, and they were stoked on that. Nitro Circus came to my hometown of Seattle, and I got to ride that one. So I got some tickets for some of the guys from home, and they came up and checked it out, and they were just blown away by everything and beyond stoked. So that really helped me. And then X Games came about, and actually ended up manifesting into, invite, and then, obviously the outcome of getting a medal and all that. And so we've just been kind of going with the flow. It's growing exponentially, the company, but then also our sponsorship. And, it might not be, the multi-million-dollar deal that some of these top guys in the industry get from Red Bull or something like that. But, I think it's kind of cool to be at the forefront of something like snow biking, but as an example, but then, bringing new sponsors into the industry that, to kind of push out some of these bigger entities that have been here forever, and, out with the old and with the new.
Yeah, I love that story, because there's a lot of things that had to kind of happen, that you had to stick with it for it to all work out. And I love the fact that you're talking about bringing in a different business into the market, because that's called a non-endemic sponsor, right? Outside of the industry. And there's like a ton of money out in the world that they have marketing dollars, they have marketing budget. Not all of the companies within the motorsports world, the endemic sponsors, have that same budget. So you bring in some of these other companies, and that opens up the world for what this industry can really do. I mean, imagine if Monster and Red Bull and Rockstar had never come into motorsports. Like, I mean, that'd be a different world. I don't even know what that world would look like. So, like, yeah, maybe this is the next one. I'm even thinking, like, NASCAR, it's pretty popular to have non-endemic sponsors in there. The Tides and the Good Wrench and, the Lowe's and stuff like that. But imagine if that started making, those companies made their way into, some of the off-road sectors and, snowcross and things like that. I mean, it could be there's a big market there, essentially.
Absolutely. And I think another thing with Hum that's cool is, just the overall consensus with, the way that America is going. I mean, you see a lot more health conscious options for diet and everything else kind of starting to formulate. And, being that they're sort of a healthy alternative to some of these other beverage companies that, as it's kind of starting to surface, they're not really that good for you. So I think it's one of those things where just that in general, I think the industry's begging for it. But then also, too, I mean, the sport of freestyle motocross, for instance, has grown so fast since its inception. I mean, you look at, the stick and ball sports like baseball or anything like that, and they have longevity because, their growth has been real steady. It hasn't been this exponential curve a lot of motorsports have had. So I think one of the ways to kind of help these sports continue to grow and have longevity is to bring some of these new sponsors into the industry that haven't really looked at kind of dipping their hand into the pot, so to speak, in that way.
Definitely. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I love hearing those examples. You'll if you listen to any of my other episodes, you'll probably hear me do that whenever I hear a non-endemic sponsorship. I like to dig in and understand that a little bit better because there is so many opportunities out there. But like you said, I thought you said it great too. They didn't even know, right? They didn't even know exactly what to do with you, but you can show them. Which is what you did. You said, "Hey, here's what I can do," and it worked out. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting for sure. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, definitely. So another thing that I like to talk about is the moments where things don't go that great. I know that there's a lot of people out there that they reach out to a sponsor and it didn't work out, or they have a sponsorship deal for a couple years and, they run out of money. Or, I don't know. Bunch of stuff can happen. Have you ever had an experience with a sponsor that didn't go that great?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, like the sponsors I do have, everything's been pretty smooth, but I'm also probably a little more picky than I should be, as far as trying to make the most of, my career and trying to be the most financially profitable in that regard. But I think, in a kind of a basic sense, like, I mean, just like a lot of guys, I'm sure, I mean, you spend so much time trying to get contacts at some of these companies or sending emails or just phone calls that are just to a dead end. I mean, I've done plenty of that where I've been super hopeful and thought that I've been talking to the right people. And then, it comes back as our budgets are tapped this year, or, we don't really see the benefit, or we're not really looking to go that avenue this year. Maybe next year, get a hold of us in, October or whatever is where a lot of these companies kind of look at rider support. And I've had my share of that, plenty of it. And I think it's important when that stuff does happen not to discourage and just, keep pressing on, because I think it kind of goes back to that old saying of like, you can get 100 no's, but it only takes one yes. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm-hmm. I want to dig in a little bit to something you said, because I think it could be a pretty important little segment here. You said, I'm a little more picky. So elaborate on that. I mean, are you talking about with the type of business that you approach or how you approach it? I mean, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd say it's the kind of companies that I approach. So, like, Hum's a prime example. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about them at all. Like, I wholeheartedly believe in their mission statement, what they're all about. I mean, after X Games, I got to go in and finally meet everybody at the headquarters there, and everybody is just such a good-hearted person that just legitimately loves life, loves their job, loves what they do, and you just get treated with the utmost respect. And as an athlete, you hope that the people you represent and have that kind of outlook on things and are stoked on what you're doing. As the company should be with you. I mean, they don't want someone that's going to have a bad attitude or, falsely preach their product and then, find out later they're bad mouthing it or something like that. So, I'd say as far as the picking is concerned, it's just companies that I think fit my profile and fit my image and fit what I'm all about. And, I like to think that, carries a lot more weight than just taking the short road, and, hopefully will prevail in the long run.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. We've definitely talked about it on the show from the standpoint of, you want to be with the businesses that you trust, you feel comfortable with, but it also, one way of phrasing it is that you have control as well. So as a rider or racer, you are part of that decision. And just because somebody makes you an offer, if you don't really feel like it's the right fit, that's okay. Sometimes that might be hard to make that choice to turn down an offer, but I mean, sometimes you just got to trust if you do have a gut feeling that says it's wrong, trust that. And even on the same tune, if you see a company that you really, just for whatever reason, connect with and you want to spend more time with that company or you want to get sponsored by them and you got your first no, try again. Like, keep going after that company if you feel like there's just if it feels right to you. I think that's a good approach to take. Well, that's good, man. Next, I want to talk about social media. What I want to understand a little bit is like your strategy for social media, the type of platforms you're on, and how you kind of plan and share information.
Yeah, so I mainly use like Instagram for social, but I link like Twitter and Facebook to all that. And mainly just because, I mean, a lot of the action sports stuff, I mean, it's so visual as it is. So Instagram just works great for that. I mean, you can snap a photo or a video and you can go live in a matter of seconds. So I actually had a buddy too that kind of clued me in a little bit on some of the stuff they do. And if I recall, which I kind of try to stick to, but it was like a rule of 3, I believe he said. So the way he describes me it was kind of using boxing terms, but it was like jab, 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 and then like an uppercut, kind of the knockout punch.
Jab, jab, right hook.
Right hook, that's what it is.
I got the book right here. Yeah, I mean, you can't see it, but this is one I keep on my desk. Gary Vaynerchuk wrote a book on social media, and it's called Jab, 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 Right Hook. So, yeah, These are legit concepts.
Yep, so I try to kind of stick to that. I try not to throw out just banger content, one after another. You got to kind of let people, kind of get drooling at the mouth, I guess, for the next big banger post you're going to put out. So, I mean, I try and do like some lifestyle stuff, maybe some behind the scenes type stuff, and then I'll throw out, for the motocross type of deal, I guess, like a big trick that I do, or like a big post from X Games or something like that. And then, with the Instagram story stuff too, that's just kind of the day-to-day stuff people can kind of clue in on and get even more of the behind the scenes. Because I feel like, at least for me, I know, I'm an athlete, but, I like to see what everybody else is doing behind the scenes too, not just the riding piece of it. I think it's kind of cool when people get to see, what you're up to, what it takes to actually get to these events rather than just once the curve drops, there it is. So, I try to kind of clue people in on that sort of thing. And, I just try to gather as much content as I can. And I'm honestly probably not the best person at it, but I'm learning as I go and, figuring things out and, just kind of making it happen.
Well, I'm very glad that your friend mentioned that book, the Jab, 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 Right Hook, the Rule of 3. I actually read that book, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 ago, but I changed the way that I do social media as a result, and I think it's gotten better. I mean, I'm not the best with all the data analytics, but I think that it's gotten better. But I started doing for the show, when I first started my Instagram page, I only did the episode thumbnails. So basically, like, hey, here's the episode, go download it. And it had some good engagement and everything, but the important thing the thing that I used to do though was that's all I ever posted on was basically the right hook. The right hook is, hey, go do something, go take action. After reading that book, I started doing other things where I'll just say, hey, this guy or this gal is really cool. So before an episode releases, I'll share a few things that are just really cool pictures of that person that is going to be on the show in the future. So it's kind of like getting people excited about it, and then I'll actually release that episode. And it seems like it's helped. I feel like I get a lot more engagement as a result. So I definitely think that those are good ideas for social media.
Sure. And social media, it's not exactly new, but it's constantly evolving. And unfortunately, it's the way the world's going. A lot of sponsors, I know that's the big platform they look at, or one of them. So, it's definitely one of those things that's kind of a science that you got to kind of learn and figure out.
Definitely. So you're primarily on Instagram. Do you do anything with Twitter? I've been really struggling with Twitter lately. Like, I kind of want to smack it around a little bit. Are you on that platform?
Honestly, I do have a Twitter, and I made it several years ago and kind of forgot about it. So I started to get back into it, but everything that goes to my Twitter is literally just fed from Instagram. So I'm very rarely even on Twitter and check anything. I just roll it into Twitter for those people that, religiously use it.
Yeah, I honestly, this sounds crazy, but I kind of forgot as well. I pulled up my Twitter the other day. I was like, shoot, I haven't posted anything. Nothing, not even linked. I haven't posted anything to it in probably 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And I was like, yeah, this is bad. Like, bad on you, Josh. But it is what it is. I just don't get a lot of engagement on Twitter, and I know some people do. I don't know. I've been really, really struggling with that. I'm looking for that next thing. Like, there's got to be something coming that, I don't know. It's something completely different. I'm expecting something like super targeted, like social media for, Nitro Circus people. I don't know. I think something.
That would actually be interesting.
Coming. Yeah. I don't know what it would be.
It's like something.
I think it's kind of what Facebook started doing by groups, right? So you could really have a focused thing, but you want unfiltered, where if you have a bunch of followers, you're actually going to reach those followers. But I don't know, it's coming, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's a machine. It's a super machine, and it's hard to learn everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, social media is big, but outside of social media, is there anything in particular that you do to kind of market yourself or get yourself out there?
I would say probably the biggest thing would be at a lot of our local shows that we do. I really try to grow, I should say, my presence in the Northwest, which I haven't always lived in the Northwest. I was born and raised here, grew up here, but, when I really started to kind of come into my own with freestyle motocross, I moved away for 5 or 6 years and then had just moved back here probably within the last 2.5 years. And now that I'm back here and have, these accolades to add to my resume to kind of build my credibility, I've been, for the last handful of years, just really been brainstorming ways to kind of get involved in the community and give back. So, like I said, the events we do here, we try to blow them up and promote them the best that we can, whether they're our own or for different promoters or whatnot. And just try to take the Northwest by storm and kind of do things for kids in the area that maybe never thought that they had a chance at doing anything spectacular with their lives, and thought that it was just one path road. And that's kind of where my focus for my career I'd like to see go. When it starts to dwindle, I'd like to be one of those people that can not only be a role model, but just kind of inspire the next generation to do spectacular things.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like it's the natural progression. If you look at, I don't know, I'm gonna get a little weird here for a minute, but Maslow, there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's like a psychology chart that says all these things that basically once you have your essential needs, like food and shelter and things like that taken care of, then you move to the next level, which maybe it's like social interaction and things like that. And at some point you reach, I can't remember the chart all off the top of my head, but at some point you reach a spot where you want to help others, and you're no longer concerned about yourself, and you really just want to give back. So it's pretty interesting to see that transition. And I think that's how we make our sport better overall too, is by figuring out ways that ultimately we can succeed and then give back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's just part of what makes a well-rounded athlete too. I mean, you got to have a grasp on the bigger picture. And the bigger picture doesn't necessarily mean, you as a whole. So I think it's definitely important.
That's awesome. Well, we're cruising right along. Very frequently I do this. I'll kind of condense the main event down to make sure we can fit everything in. So I want to do that again. And there's one question that if I go-to question, if I run out of time or I'm a little short to cover everything, and that is, what's next for your motorsports career? I feel like everybody has this in the back of their mind. They're like, well, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do to push myself? So for you, I mean, where do you think your head's at?
It's kind of a loaded question, because I kind of felt like, having turned 30 this year, or right at the end of last year, typically guys in action sports, they don't have the greatest longevity. Their bodies start to kind of feel things. Mm-hmm. But then, with snow bikes coming about and making my first X Games appearance, that, well, for all intents and purposes, I kind of figured that X Games was just a pipe dream for me at this point. As I was getting older in my career. And I've kind of reshifted my focus the last few months since X Games. I mean, I'm starting to kind of want to tackle challenges that I've dismissed that I never thought I'd want to do with freestyle motocross, and try to maybe see if I can't make it into summer X Games now, and then also continue with the snow bike thing and try to win some more medals in winter X Games. And then, on top of that too, try to grow my Jet City FMX brand a bit more and just do more community events like we were talking about. I want to do some stuff that is kind of like just events mainly that showcase what I'm still able to do and fortunate to do, but then, pump up the community and help out and get kids stoked on life and wanting to chase those big audacious dreams they had since they were little. I think that's super important that, kids don't lose sight of that. I mean, if, you get kids that, back in grade school and whatnot that have always been like, well, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to, be a doctor, or just these crazy, crazy things that, get kind of overshadowed as you get older. But, that's not the case. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do in life. It's just a matter of how bad you want it and how bad you want to push for it, despite the hurdles you're going to face. So I think that's ultimately like my big goal with everything, is just to give back to the community and do something bigger than just riding a dirt bike and being that guy that's known for riding a dirt bike.
Yeah, and I really like how you reframed your current state too. I mean, you were probably thinking 28, 29, like, golden years are wrapping up, and what you thought might have been next is now completely shifted, and I think that's phenomenal. I mean, you look at some other people out there who have done similar transitions. I'm thinking like Jeremy McGrath, right? Jeremy McGrath was killer Supercross guy, and he got a little older. Well, now he's like killer off-road racer, and like Ricky Carmichael, same thing. And now he owns his own. Like isn't Ricky Carmichael own the Arena Cross series?
I think he does have a big piece of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the way he figured out to extend his career. A lot of times, like in football, they get pretty beat up. Their bodies get tested, and a lot of those people, if they're really passionate, they can move into coaching, or they can, announcers, whatever it might be. There's a lot of cool stuff, but I think one thing really exciting about the motorsports off-road world now is there's new vehicles that allow you to extend that as well. I mean, you look at the Polaris has the RS1, which is a one-seater, razor essentially, and people if they're not capable of riding a dirt bike to a really high level in the future, they may be able to transfer into that and extend their career out. But I also I'm thinking of an example. One of the sponsors of the show, he was also on the show. I think it was like episode 49. I don't know. I get them all confused now. But Jimmy Moore of Bold Racing, he didn't start off-road racing professionally. I mean, he did a lot of stuff. He raced a lot of stuff, back in the day. But he just started off-road racing like at age 45, I think, and he's killing it right now. There's a lot of options. Basically, what I'm saying is don't count yourself out too early. If you're passionate about something, just reframe where you're at.
Totally. I think there's a lot to be said for the human spirit too. I mean, if your mind's still there, your body might be beat up, but you'll find a way to make it happen or make something happen. So, I think just staying mentally strong is a big piece of it all.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know what? I might throw one other quick question here in the mindset category, and that's around inspiration. So, who would you say inspires you the most, and why?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's been so many people along the lines, in the early days of my career to now. I would say back in the day, it was probably some of the bigger name dudes that have kind of stepped out of the sport now. I mean, a lot of people say, Pastrana, and that's kind of cliche, but I mean, it's true. Like, the guy's a prime example of someone who has just chased the craziest dream and done the craziest things and continues to do them just because he loves doing them. I mean, I think he's a great ambassador for the sport and a good role model for kids then and now. It's funny because a lot of these people that I looked up to, I now consider good friends, and I, either see on the daily or talk to on the daily, and, they're more than just a friend or a mentor. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool to get to that point in your career. And then even some of my close friends that I grew up riding with that, they've either surpassed me or I surpassed them or what have you. I mean, everybody, like, there's so many people that inspire me that just keep me going the day to day.
That's awesome. I was very fortunate to interview Travis Pastrana at the Vegas Reno race in 2017. That's, if people want to listen to it, episode 37. And he is awesome. I mean, I got to spend like 5 minutes with him. I interviewed him for maybe 2, and it was great. I mean, he's very personable, but you can see him at the way he interacts with people. He truly wants to interact with them. He's not just checking a box to say, oh, yep, I shook 28 hands today. Great. That's off the list. Like, he genuinely is interested in making connections with his fans. And even if they're not his fans, he's genuinely interested in connecting with people.
Absolutely. And I think I've tried to kind of model my career on that too. Like, I'm usually the guy, whether it's my own event or another event that I'm riding for a different promoter, that, I'll be one of the guys that's standing there till the very end to make sure everybody gets an autograph or gets to say hi. Whereas, some of the guys will just walk off after they get their quota. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I get there's certain circumstances, but, without the fans and without people there, like, we don't have a job. So
right.
I think that's a big piece of it too.
Oh, very good. Well, we are now going to wrap things up at the finish line. And I just want to pull out one piece of advice that you think people should take away from this conversation.
Yeah, I would just say, whether it's going after sponsors or just, trying to do what you want to do in general, just persevere, don't give up. Don't be a knucklehead either. I mean, you'd be surprised just how far a good attitude and just having a good head on your shoulders, and being nice to everybody. Even when you're faced with challenges or people that aren't very cordial to you, just stick true to yourself and do what you want to do and keep pushing. And you won't surprise yourself. That's kind of been the whole MO of my career, is just doing what I want to do and staying true to myself. And here we are, 30 years old. I got my first X Games medal, and I don't see any signs of stopping anytime soon.
That's awesome. You need to start doing some of that Tom Brady stuff where you drink like 28 gallons of water a day and, only eat like, I don't even know what he eats, but like wheatgrass and whatever. You need to do that, and you could do this thing till you're like 60. No problem.
I don't know if my body's going to feel too good when I'm 60, even with that kind of a diet, though.
Everybody I think half the audience is probably going to be Tom Brady haters, and then half of them maybe like him, but people now are probably, there had to have been at least one other laugh from that. Interesting thing,
great.
Quick side note before I close things out. So I am a Tom Brady fan. If people want to throw shade at me, that's cool. But my wife is not necessarily, and she always pulls out the weird things he says and does. So he said something like, I don't get sunburned because of how much water I drink. And my wife is in the medical profession. She's like, no, I don't think that that's true. But
wow.
So hey, you could do that, and then you'll never get sunburned again too. So there you go.
Maybe if I get bored one day, I'll try that. But
let me know.
That just doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, if it works, let me know. I'm not going to try it because I trust that you'll be able to get an accurate test there. So you just let me know what happens, and we'll go from there. All right. Well, hey, what's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
I would just say social media, probably. I mean, just like anything, send me a message or comment or something on my social. Just Haslam FMX, or keep an eye out for my company. Will be launching it at Get It Gripped. So either way, check it out, and let's chat, let's talk. If you guys haven't need any advice or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm available.
Perfect. Well, hey, I really appreciate you sharing your story. You got a lot of cool examples. I was really excited to hear your example with Kombucha. I said that wrong. Kombucha. Did I say it right that time?
There you go.
I think that's a really cool story. The whole way you got connected with Nitro Circus is pretty amazing. I liked how you talk about you being a little bit picky with the sponsor that you select, and that ultimately has led to you not really having that many bad experiences. So really cool stuff. But at this point, we got to close things out. So I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.
Cheers.
Boom. There it is. That's the show. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go over and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. So next up, we have Kyle Pauline, snowcross racer for Polaris and Team LaValle. Awesome guy. Also, he's a fellow Michigander, just like his teammate, Zach Mason, who we interviewed back on episode 16. Please, 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 please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. It does wonders for the show and allows us to attract amazing guests. If you have questions or guest recommendations, shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. Special thanks go out to our sponsors, Armor Coat, Solder Weld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. Beyond that, I want to give another quick shout out to our other sponsors, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and One Stop Performance. Make sure that you're following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Facebook is where we go live periodically, so make sure you head over there and follow. I look forward to serving you again next week. But until then, have fun and ride safe.